Lena had always been a creature of habit, waking before sunrise, grinding beans at the cafe, smiling through exhaustion. But that day at the airport, her routine collided with fate. She spotted him from a distance, same build, same walk, and her heart leapt. Without hesitation, she ran and wrapped her arms around him, whispering, "You came back." But when the man turned, it wasn't her brother. It was someone entirely different. Daniel West wasn't used to being touched by strangers. His life, boxed in boardrooms and headlines, was orderly, controlled.
Hello, I'm going to tell you this incredible story. Remember that to receive new stories like this, you can subscribe to the channel, like the video, and activate the notification bell. Without further ado, let's get to the rest of the story.
But when Lena hugged him like he mattered, like she knew his soul, something stirred. Instead of backing away, he chuckled, genuinely intrigued. That kind of raw, emotional story wasn't part of his everyday billionaire existence. People say first impressions are everything. But what about mistaken ones? Daniel could have brushed her off, called security, walked away. Instead, he stayed. Something about her presence felt different, real. And in that one hug, brief and accidental, the seeds of one of those touching stories that only real life could write began to grow. Lena's cheeks flushed the moment she realized her mistake. "I thought you were my brother. I'm so sorry," she stammered, backing away. But Daniel's smile didn't fade. He looked at her, not with irritation, but with curiosity. Most people only saw his wallet. She saw a person, and that disarmed him completely. The world can be brutal to the kind-hearted. Lena knew that better than most. Working long hours, barely making rent, carrying the weight of her family on her back. Yet here she was, laughing off the awkward moment, still polite, still gentle. And Daniel? He hadn't smiled like that in years. There was something magnetic in that moment, like two lives bumping into each other for a reason. Some believe in coincidences, others in destiny. But what if both met halfway in an airport terminal? That hug was more than a mistake. It was the kind of emotional story you hear once in a lifetime. As Daniel walked away, he kept glancing back, wondering why he couldn't forget her face. And Lena? She tried to shake it off, but something inside her had shifted. Later that week, while wiping down tables, Lena looked up and froze. There he was, again. Not in a suit this time, but in jeans, leaning against the counter with a knowing smirk. "Do you always greet strangers like that?" he teased. That wasn't the end of their real story. It was only the first chapter. Daniel didn't need caffeine. What he needed, though he'd never admit it, was a reason to feel grounded again. That tiny cafe with its chipped mugs and warm scent of cinnamon had become his new ritual. Every morning, Lena was there, messy bun, quick wit, and eyes that carried more strength than sadness. She wasn't just part of his emotional story. She was the calm in his chaos. "Back for the hazelnut latte," or the company. Lena would tease, raising an eyebrow. Daniel, always cool under pressure, found himself fumbling for words. It was strange. He could negotiate billion-dollar deals, but not handle a 5-minute chat with a barista. She wasn't impressed by his watch or his name, and that unnerved him, but also made him stay longer than he ever planned to. Their conversations weren't surface level. They talked about music, memories, and the kind of fears you only reveal when you think no one's really listening. Lena spoke about her late parents and the restaurant they once owned. Daniel, in turn, shared small cracks in his glossy life. Loneliness, pressure, the weight of expectations. It was one of those touching stories that slowly unfolded over coffee cups and quiet mornings. Lena tried to keep her distance. Rich men were trouble, and she'd seen enough of life to know fairy tales didn't pay the bills. But Daniel didn't behave like someone used to getting his way. He listened, really listened, and laughed at her sarcasm like it was poetry. She found herself opening up, just a little, wondering if maybe real connections didn't care about class or background. He never flaunted his wealth. No flashy cars, no name-dropping, no arrogant air. Just worn sneakers, genuine smiles, and a weird obsession with banana muffins. Lena noticed the little things, how he helped old customers with trays, how he stayed after hours just to talk. Slowly, almost reluctantly, her walls started to lower. This wasn't just any man, it was someone stepping into her real story. Even her co-workers noticed the change. "You've got a billionaire admirer," one whispered with a wink. Lena rolled her eyes, but her heart skipped in ways she didn't expect. There was something addictively honest about their connection, like two strangers finding a home in each other's presence. But of course, life had a way of complicating even the sweetest beginnings. Still, every time he walked in, it felt like the next page in something unfinished. Something that neither of them had the courage to name just yet. They weren't a couple, not really, but they weren't strangers anymore either. And in between refills and laughter, a silent question hung between them. What if this wasn't just another fleeting moment? Sometimes the truth doesn't come crashing in. It slips through quietly and rearranges everything. Lena was cleaning up after the lunch rush when she heard the name West Corp on the radio. Her hand froze mid-wipe. That was the same corporation that bought out her family's beloved restaurant, turning years of tradition into a parking lot. A quick online search confirmed it. Daniel's last name wasn't just a coincidence. It was a heartbreak in disguise. The next time he walked in, something had changed. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and her laughter was hollow. Daniel noticed immediately. "Everything okay?" he asked. Lena simply nodded, but inside, she was crumbling. This wasn't just an emotional story anymore. This was betrayal with a familiar face. That night, Lena confronted him, her voice shaking with a mix of fury and disbelief. Daniel didn't deny it. "I didn't know," he said quietly, genuinely. But knowing or not didn't ease the pain. That restaurant was her parents' dream, and she had to watch it get erased from the map. Now learning the man she trusted was tied to it, it cut deep. She walked away before he could explain further. Trust isn't a light switch. It's a fragile thing built over time and shattered in seconds. And even though her heart ached to turn back, pride held her straight. This was no longer the charming banter over banana muffins. It was a real story marked by loss and conflict, and Lena didn't know if she could forgive it. As if things couldn't get worse, life delivered another blow. Her younger brother, Noah, collapsed during a shift at the bookstore. The diagnosis, a rare kidney condition. Expensive, urgent, and terrifying. Lena held herself together for him, pretending she could fix it all, but deep down, she knew she was drowning. And Daniel? He stayed away, but not for long. When he found out, Daniel offered help instantly. Quietly, respectfully, without strings. But Lena's pride screamed louder than her fear. "We don't need charity," she snapped, turning down the very thing that could save her brother. Yet Daniel didn't push. Instead, he made an offer she could live with, cook for him for 1 week. In exchange, he'd cover Noah's treatment. Not a handout, a deal. And maybe that's what made her say yes. Not because she forgave him, not yet, but because his offer came from a place of humility. It was strange how something so painful could pull two people back in the same orbit. Sometimes the most touching stories are the ones born not in perfect moments, but in the middle of chaos and contradiction. Lena packed her things and knocked on Daniel's door, ready to face what came next. Daniel's house wasn't just big, it was massive, intimidating even. Yet, in the quiet of his kitchen, with the smell of garlic and onions in the air, it started to feel like something else, safe. Lena cooked while he hovered nearby, asking about her spices, her techniques, her day. It was strange how easily they moved in sync. And in that simple rhythm, their emotional story kept evolving, slowly, sweetly. Meals turned into conversations. Conversations turned into laughter. And somewhere between Tuesday's risotto and Friday's roasted chicken, the tension between them changed. Lena found herself watching him when he wasn't looking. He'd lean against the doorway, sleeves rolled up, listening like every word she said mattered. And for the first time in a long while, she felt seen. Daniel never rushed her. He didn't push for answers or apologies, just offered a steady presence. They watched old movies in silence, folded laundry together, argued over who made the better coffee. And yet, there was something electric beneath it all. Lena began to realize that sometimes the most touching stories aren't grand declarations, but moments shared when no one else is watching. Then came the night he showed her the hospital paperwork. Noah's surgery had been scheduled, paid for, approved. No announcement, no credit seeking, just a man who cared enough to take action when it mattered. Lena stared at the documents, hands trembling. That was the moment her walls began to truly crack. Not from pressure, but from kindness. They stood in the kitchen, the air thick with unspoken emotion. And then, finally, it happened. A kiss that wasn't rushed or desperate, but quiet and full of meaning. It wasn't about passion, it was about trust. The kind of connection that had taken root over shared meals and silent glances. A kiss born from a real story neither of them had planned for. In the days that followed, everything felt lighter. Daniel surprised her with a garden full of her parents' favorite herbs. He admitted he'd looked up their old menu, hoping to recreate the dishes she missed most. It was gestures like that, intentional, selfless, that made her see him differently. He wasn't trying to fix the past. He was building something new with her. Then, without fanfare, he handed her an envelope. Inside, ownership papers. Her family's restaurant. Restored, returned, reimagined. It should have never been taken, he said softly. Lena didn't cry. Not yet. But something in her heart shifted, something deep and permanent. She wasn't just falling in love. She was healing, rebuilding. And the real story they were creating, it was just getting started. The grand reopening of the restaurant wasn't marked by balloons or media flashes. It was family, warmth, and familiar faces lining up outside. Lena stood by the door, apron on, smile wide, heart full. The walls were the same, but the energy was different. New life, new purpose. Daniel was there too, of course, helping carry trays, shaking hands, blending in. It wasn't just a business anymore. It was part of their emotional story. Critics whispered, "She's just with him for the money," they said. Others pointed at Daniel, calling it a phase, a distraction. But neither of them flinched. They knew what they had built wasn't based on wealth. It was built on broken pieces slowly mended together. And in a world full of doubt, theirs was one of those rare, touching stories people never forget. Daniel's ex tried to make noise. An icy message here, a headline there. But Lena didn't react with jealousy. She stood tall, rooted in something stronger. Trust. Every time Daniel looked at her, it wasn't with performance, it was with peace. And slowly, even the critics quieted, replaced by admiration for a real story unfolding in front of them. He didn't propose with a diamond the size of a golf ball. It was simple, a quiet walk in the garden behind the cafe, her favorite spot. He handed her a folded note that simply said, "Let's keep building this, together." When she turned, he was already down on one knee. No spotlight, no crowd, just love, humble, honest, and deep. Their wedding wasn't extravagant. It was laughter, dancing barefoot on the grass, and Noah giving the best man speech. It was her former customers clapping, her co-workers crying, and Daniel crying too, finally freely. The garden was wrapped in soft lights, and the air smelled of lavender and roasted bread. If you listened closely, you'd swear it was the kind of moment every emotional story dreams of. Marriage didn't change everything. It just gave their love a place to grow. Lena continued working at the cafe, sometimes burning toast, sometimes dancing between tables. Daniel took fewer business calls, spent more evenings cooking pasta he still hadn't mastered. But they were happy. Not perfect, happy. And that made all the difference. Every love story begins somewhere. Theirs? It started with a mistaken hug. A clumsy, heart-first moment that led to healing, trust, and something they never saw coming. And as they stood together beneath the garden lights, their hands intertwined, one truth lingered in the air. Sometimes the wrong person at first glance turns out to be the right one all along. Have you ever experienced a moment that seemed small, but ended up changing everything? Lena thought she was hugging her brother. Instead, she embraced the man who would reshape her life in ways she never imagined. From heartbreak to healing, from distance to devotion, theirs wasn't just a romance. It was a real story of two broken paths that chose to grow together. And now, I want to know, do you believe in accidents? Or do you think everything happens for a reason? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to hear what you think. And hey, if this emotional story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next incredible journey.